Hey everyone, how's it going? I'm Gary Hibner and welcome to my channel, and in this video we're going to be taking a look how we can sound like Loathe. Now, I have done some other videos with regards to Loathe and their guitar tone, but in this video in particular, we're going to be taking a look at the writing style and how you can write like Loathe. But before getting into that, I just want to give a huge shout out to Gear4Music, who sent me this G4M 638 that I can use in this video. So this is a 30-inch baritone guitar, and you really need that longer scale to get down to the low tunings that Loathe uses. So proof that you can play Loathe on a Gear4Music guitar, here is their previous guitarist Connor playing a Sub-Zero guitar, which was the brand before it got remodeled as Gear4Music, and you can see him playing it here on a Loathe YouTube guitar playthrough video. So let's talk about Loathe's tuning. So they use a sort of alternate drop E tuning, and what they've got is basically the first to fifth string here is drop A, and then they use a low E over here. Now, I'm sort of using a derivative of this tuning. I'm using drop E just because I prefer the chord shapes, but basically that is the Loathe tuning. You want to get down to an E1. And really with this longer scale, it's just going to allow you to tune down lower with the guitar intonating perfectly, and also you can use some lighter gauges so that you don't have to use super heavy gauges on a shorter scale guitar. So this guitar goes for about £200. It's really the most affordable option to get into a long scale baritone. So that's around about $260. But I definitely highly recommend this if you're getting into some low tunings, you want that 30-inch scale, and you need a guitar that's going to get down to this low tuning for you. And just to interject over here, if you're new to the channel or if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, and also don't forget to click on that notification bell to be notified of future videos. Now what I'm doing is a pre-EQ before it hits the amp or the high gain tone. So I've got an EQ over here where I've cut out the low frequencies below 80 Hz. I've done a slight little dip over here at 170 Hz, another sort of sharper dip with a narrower Q at about 650 Hz, and then a little boost in the high mid-range over here at 2 kHz. Then after that, I'm adding in a tube screamer, but I'm not going to get into that right now. I just want to show you the high gain and then how we can use that tube screamer to tighten up the tone. So for the amp tone, I'm using the Otto Audio 1111. Now this amp is really great with low tuning. So I've just dialed in these settings over here, and I've got this for the guitar. So that is that low E. Now then, before the amp, I'm using a tube screamer, and with this, I'm just using it just to tighten up that low tone and give it a bit more clarity. So as you can see, I don't have any drive here, but I do have the tone and the level at mid. So that's just giving a bit of a tighter tone. Okay, so that is the guitar tone. Now let's talk about some of the riff styles. Now let's talk about the style of riffs that Loathe use. Now they sort of jump between a bunch of different genres, but for their heavier stuff, it's quite groove orientated. Now they use quite a bit of single notes and then blend in some chords as well. And they also move up and down the sort of fretboard over here, playing some of the low notes here, and then jumping right up over here to get a sort of different timbre on the strings. Now let me show you this riff that I've come up with for the verse idea, which has got a lot of inspiration from their newest single, Gifted Every Strength. So as you saw, we've got that movement there where we've got this riff and moving lower and then up and then some sort of distant chords. So that's what we're using a lot of. We're using single notes, moving up and down the fretboard, and then adding in some distant chords. And for the tempo, I'm using 120 BPM, and the time signature, I'm using a 6/8. So that 6/8 is going to add to that sort of groove orientation of the song. But where Loathe really take it a step further is they add some complexity to the riff. So when it comes back around and they play it again, they add in some different variety to it. So this is what I've added to the verse. Now let's talk about the bass guitar before we get into some more guitar parts. So for the bass, it's playing in the same tuning as the guitar, so basically in unison. So I'm using this Gear4Music G4M 972 bass over here, and I'm basically playing on the E string over here, And then for the tone, what I'm using Neural Glass's dark glass over here just to add a bit of saturation into the sound. So we're blending in the clean tone with some saturation. And then I'm just going into compressor just to even out some of the sounds. So this is what it sounds like with just the bass and the drums. So I'll play this over here. If you want to know more about this long scale multi-bass from Gear for Music, I have done a video over here, so go check that out to know more about this bass so you can add this into your productions as well. Okay, so that's the verse idea. As you can hear, it's quite groove orientated. We've got those single notes and adding in some chugging as well and some distant chords. Now for this next section in the arrangement, the pre-chorus idea, I want to use some power chords and I'll show you how we can add some more complexity by changing it up each time we play through it. Now Loathe doesn't keep things simple. Each time a part comes back around again, they like to add in some changes. So what I want to do is add in some higher single notes into that riff and also change the length of the time. So each time the part loops over again, there's sort of a different length to it and just create some extra interest in the production. So like you saw, we've got these power chords over here. But then it goes to that sort of higher single note area. So stuff like that really adds some interest. So you'll be playing some chords and then go higher up. So try things like that that really adds to that sort of Loathe type of sound. So the verse and the pre-chorus are sort of the heavier sections of the song. Now for the chorus, I want to go for that shoegazy vibe that Loathe adds into their productions. And this takes heavy influence from Deftones. So for the chords over here, I want to add an octave G and then add in that low E and combining them together. So that's definitely that Deftones chord that you hear a lot in their songs. So for this chord progression, I'm just going to expand on that chord and jump up over here and then over here. And then just repeat that and then add in some changes like you'll hear over here. So as you heard, there were some extra little changes in there that just add some interest. I've got that little stop where there's that little gap and then it kicks back in again. And there were some changes with the drum groove as well. Now next I want to talk about a thing that Loathe uses in their productions where they have a guitar part and then they add in an octave lower effect on that guitar. So I'm going to have a sort of breakdown outro over here that's using some single note riffing and then we're going to add in some extra guitars. So what I got here are these two guitars over here that are playing this riff. And then I've recorded two new guitar tracks over here where I've shifted them down a whole octave and blended that in with the sound. So let me show you what I mean. So on this guitar over here, I'm just going to go to this plugin that I'm using, which is Polycapo from Helix Native, and I'm shifting it down a whole octave, which is -12. And I'm going to mix this into about 40%. So this is what it sounds like. And then we turn it to 100%. That sounds really nasty. But like I said, we're going to mix this into about 40%. And then just to make it a little bit more crazy, I've added in the Swollen Pickle emulation, which is in STL Tone Amp Hub. So these are the settings that I've dialed in, and it's just going to add in some extra nastiness to the sound. Now that sounds ridiculous. So let me show you how it actually works within the context of the other guitars. So over here, these are my original guitars. And now here is the blended in octave down lower guitars. Now, it sounds pretty crazy, so let me show you the difference if we didn't have them in the production and then we add them in. So over here, this is the guitars without them. And then now adding them in. So you can hear how nasty that is by adding in that extra octave guitar. So it's a really handy trick where you just blend that in and just makes things sound even bigger and lower than they really are. So now let's jump into the vocals and see how we can incorporate a Loathe-style vocal into this production. So like I mentioned before when we went over the chorus guitar parts, Loathe takes a lot of influence from Deftones. And we're going to do the same with this chorus and the vocals. So we're going to go for sort of Chino-style vocal, which is the way that Eric would sing it in some of these more shoegazy songs. So what we got here is 3 different vocal parts. We've got a vocal that's the main vocal, then a vocal that's harmonizing higher, and one that's harmonizing lower. So I'm going to play back over here just without the high and the low. So this is what it sounds like.
Waiting for the time to get by.
So that is the main vocal. Now hearing the high harmonized one. So very high. And then over here, we got the low. And that's got quite a bit of saturation that's been added into it. Now hearing all 3 together.
Waiting for the time to get by. What I've lost is found.
Now going back to the verse section, Loathe has a big metalcore sort of hardcore following as well. So I'm going to add in some screaming hardcore vocals over this verse section. Now for this pre-chorus, I want to combine the sort of soft sung vocal parts with the screaming vocals as well. So they're going to sort of be a sort of call and response part that's happening with the cleans and the screaming. And then for that last breakdown section, for this, I want to add in some heavy screaming over those guitars with that extra filthy octave guitar as well. Now, one last thing that I want to touch on is that Loathe adds in a lot of post-production sort of ambient sounds as well. So what I want to do for an intro section over here, I want to add in a pad synth with a heavy reverberated piano. So over here, I've got these synth parts that are going to be your sort of ambient texture before going into the song. What I'm doing is I'm using an instance of Vital. It's just got this patch over here that's loaded up, and I've done a bit of tweaking to it, and then also I've added in some chorus and EQing. So it sounds like this. And then on top of this pad, I want to add a piano that's quite processed. So over here, I've got a piano that's going into some reverb, some chorus, another instance of reverb, and it sounds like this. So this is going to be our intro into the song. So we've got this pad and this piano together that are playing in, giving this ambient texture, and then we're going to hit into that heavy section. Now another thing I've done in the outro section over here is a tempo drop. Now Loathe jumps between different tempos throughout their song, so it's a nice thing to sort of explore. So if you listen to just the drums, so let me just solo the drums over here and you can hear what that sounds like. So we've got the drums over here. So that jumps from 120 down to 100 BPM. So if we listen to everything now, you'll hear how everything slows down as it gets to those low chugs on the end. So try out things like that, doing some tempo jumps within your song productions. Okay, so that's it for the ideas that I've got for this Loathe song. Now let me play through so you can hear what it sounds like with the whole arrangement and the full mix. Okay, so that's it for the how to sound like Loathe, the writing style, and the riffs and ideas that go into it. So let me know what you think in the comments. Did I come close? Like I said, it's a combination of the sort of metalcore sound with that screaming there, going into a more groove-orientated riff, then going into that shoegazy vibe with the Deftones influence in the vocals and the guitar style playing. So that's it for this video. I really like these how to sound like videos and diving in deep and analyzing the types of writing styles and production that are going into these types of songs. So let me know if you enjoyed this and also what you'd like to see in future videos. That's it. I'll catch you in the next one.